Okay, so I wanted to talk about a practice which is helpful, working in the senses. Well, not really working, but more refining. So, if you ever notice that, so you've got the mental narrative, and the story. It could be dialogue, or it could be images, or like kind of like a movie in your head, like a play out of images or a story, kind of like a movie or a TV show, which is completely based in somewhere else, some other time, some theoretical reality. So that's one layer of thinking, one layer of thought, one layer of identification. And then when we kind of notice that and are able to be aware of that and see through it as a fiction and remove that layer of identity, maybe after the initial shift in perception, then there's another layer of that. So if you ever notice when you look at something, or maybe I didn't notice this until kind of later on, if you look at something then you look away into something else, there's like I call it a tracer or an image. So for example, say I was to look at this blue car in front of me, and I look away. Well, sometimes there's the there was the kind of like a snapshot, like a tracer, like a memory image that kind of follows behind the visual sense, and it's the mind attempting to orient itself to understand where it is and what's going on, to understand its surroundings, and it's like your mind's a camera and it's taking a picture, and that kind of vague, like, it's like a kind of vague ghost picture of what you've just looked at. And you can start to notice this in all the senses, but I'm just going to do the looking for now. You start to notice that there's a vague tracer behind, like a memory, like an imprint. It's purely of the mind. It's so if I look at this blue car here, this image, and then I look at the white car, so before there would be unless I was attentive, there would be a vague image, memory, snapshot picture of the blue car, almost like overlaid in my mind. When I'm looking at that white car, when I change my focus, I'm not actually fully looking at the white car. I'm looking at the white car and the blue car that I just looked at before. A simplified version of this. So the noticing this, and then we start to see through it. Same with sound, same with sensation. That memory, that picture, or that recording in the mind. It's almost like an augmentation based in time that's laid over our immediate sensory experience. And if we develop a kind of acute sense, visual sense, an immediate visual sense, where as soon as this image changes, our attention is immediately and fully acutely immersed into what's appearing in right now, immediately. And when that image tracer, when that layer goes, everything emerges as radiant, intense, mysterious, brighter, more shining. More interesting, more immersive. And that mechanism, that picture, that tracer is solidifying the sense of a separate self moving through a world. And when we can go finely into the senses, that solidity of the world and that solidity of this person, that boundary, becomes less relevant. The visual sense becomes more interesting. The form becomes more interesting. But because we're not analysing the form with the mind, it's not particularly the form that's interesting, it's I guess you could see what the form is made of, or the let's say the essence of what this form is. I think that's a really good practice, because when you start to notice that, unless you notice it, it's just how you operate in reality. It's how you interpret reality as a person, and then when you notice that tendency to take pictures of or record reality and then interpret it, until you notice it, it just kind of is there, it goes unnoticed, and it augments a version of reality based on our essentially attempts to control the environment, or attempt to control this experience. And that's where all the stories come from. That snapshot, that picture, or that memory, that recording is the basis for all these interpretations and all these stories. So we can see right through that into something much more interesting. Suddenly the stories become not interesting anymore, unless you look at what the stories are made of. So the mind, what is that snapshot? What is this mind? What is this image in the head? What are these thoughts? Not the story of the thoughts or the movie playing in the head, but what is that made of? And that becomes very interesting as well. So that's a good one to practice if you notice this, if you can see this image tracer, then you can either look at it, what is this made of? Is this my interpretation of reality? You also notice that the image is also distorted as fuck. It's not an accurate picture. It might be for some people. I don't know if people's memory is good. Mine isn't that great, so my picture is distorted. But anyway, try that. That'll do for now.